Welcome to AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. This is David Parra, and we have a very special show today. We have none other than Ana Tovar, and the topic is Ana Tovar, Mayor of Tolleson, number 2. We already did show number 1, so this is show number 2. Let me remind you that this show is being Facebook Live. So if you do Facebook, please find us at AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. Follow the page and share it with others. It is very important. We are very, very close to 1,900 followers. Not too bad. A little over 2 years that we launched this platform to educate, to celebrate Latino accomplishments, and to connect Latino communities of all generations. And again, we are nearing 1900s. Hopefully by the end of 2019, we will reach 2,000 followers. And this is very, very good. So again, before I introduce Mayor Tovar, I want to remind you that AARP is going to be showing a documentary by Dr. Pete Dimas in 3 theaters. Glendale, Westgate. This is going to be on the 19th of this month. Then the Saturday after, the 26th, in Metro Center in Phoenix, and Arizona Mills, Tempe on November the 2nd. It's going to be episode 1. This documentary is called Arizona's Mexican Heritage, an American story. So please visit our page so you can register. We are already have about 120 people registered for the one in Glendale, and it has capacity for 160. So again, visit the page so that you can join us for that episode 1. And here we go. Again, the topic today is Ana Tovar, Mayor of Tolleson. Mayor Tovar, welcome to our show.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
How are you?
I'm doing great, and since it's cooling down a little bit, even better.
All right. Yes, indeed. Much better weather. Last time we talked about the life of your grandparents. If I remember right, you shared with us that they came to the United States in somewhat related to the Revolución Mexicana. Mm-hmm. And you shared, and then actually there was like a dicho with your great-grandparents that says, no hay mal que por bien no venga. Mm-hmm. We covered that, didn't we?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Then La Famosa Tienda, right? So you grew up basically at a store. From there you worked, you went to school, and is that store still going?
No, it is since closed, but the building itself is still there.
Okay, they put something else there, another business?
No other business. Oh. My family still owns the property, but right now it's just vacant.
Perfect. All right, so let me just kind of do a review. Sonora is where your grandparents came from. Then we also learned that Mom was born in Tolleson.
Yeah.
Your mother was born in Tolleson. She went up to 8th grade of school. Yes. And then your dad was born in Baja California?
Yes.
And you have 5 siblings?
Yes.
1 male?
Yes.
All right.
My brother.
So, it's very interesting because you are basically, you are first generation American or second?
Well, my mom was born here.
Oh, that's right. So you would be on your mother's
side.
And only...
father's side first.
Well, yeah. So a second generation Mexican American becomes the mayor of a city. You must feel, I guess, amazed about that. How do you feel? I mean, and then your family, what was the experience of becoming the mayor like for the family?
I think for the family itself, they were very proud of me, very excited as well, too. I know my son, my youngest son, he wanted a title, so we had to make up a title for him, as he wanted to be called the first prince of Tolleson. So
that's good.
Yeah, but he's a funny guy, so that's why we called him that. But I would say overall, my family's been just very proud. I myself am just humbled to know that the citizens there of Tolleson trusted me, to be their first female mayor.
Of course. Obviously, you highlighted, like we all do, the hard work of our parents. That must have been. So your grandparents and parents. Can you say just a little bit about how how crucial that was, that effort of our parents to lay the good foundation so that their kids' life would be much better
Oh,
than theirs.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that tradition runs very deep in the city of Tolleson, where, our grandparents and our parents truly instilled in us the value of education because they weren't allotted that opportunity for a quality education.
And it's interesting because we emphasize education, Mayor Ana Tovar, so much, and it has to do because of the economic system that we have, right? I mean, in our economic system right now, I mean, in the old age, I mean, maybe you wanted to have cattle, maybe you wanted to have caballos or something to till the ground, and bueyes or what have you. But in this day and age, the type of economy that we have, and why not say it, is capitalism. In a capitalistic society, the best approach to making it and living a better life is through education, right?
Absolutely.
That's why we emphasize so much education.
And I think I instill it in my children as well too. We all want our own, sons and daughters to do better than what we had.
Right.
And I'm sure that was the same with my grandparents and parents as well too. They didn't want to see, us suffer. They wanted to see that we would take full advantage of the United States and live that dream that many people come here for and die here to come for.
That's right. And you said it, many die. Many die in the process of crossing the border, for example, because they sense that there's something better on this side of the border. Let me also say that you did get your BS, the bachelor's of science or in science, bachelor of science in education.
Correct.
And also you from ASU, by the way, and you have a minor in ESL, and you actually taught. You were a teacher at the elementary level. There in Tolleson?
There in Tolleson.
I wanted to ask you, how was that experience of teaching? I mean, how was it like?
Oh my goodness. I absolutely loved being a teacher. So I applied at one school, and that was at PH Gonzalez. And the good thing is that they hired me. So I became a first grade teacher. And for me, I totally believed I would be a school teacher for the rest of my life. I felt that I was in my element and that I was definitely helping the children there of Tolleson. And it was quite unique because that was the school that I attended as well, too. Not the physical school itself, but the same school that I attended. And then I also had the pleasure of teaching with teachers that taught me when I was going through school there. So it was a unique situation to be able to give back to my community by teaching kindergarten and first grade.
And I have notes here that you actually did not incur school debt. How did you do that?
I worked very hard.
So you paid for the school, or you got scholarships?
I did get scholarships. I was fortunate enough to have a scholarship at ASU. It was called the Maroon and Gold Scholarship.
Okay.
And then I also worked full time while going to ASU. So I was very much a part of paying for going to college and working a full-time schedule and going to school at a full-time schedule as well.
In the days where you obviously did FAFSA already existed, did you completed FAFSA? Or FAFSA is fairly new?
I don't know. I don't recall.
Okay. You don't recall?
Yeah, I just remember getting a scholarship, a Maroon and Gold Scholarship.
From the school, actually?
From the school,
okay,
yeah.
Directly.
Got
it. Okay, so then let's talk a little bit about. We only have one more minute. Actually, let's take a short break so that we don't have to break in the middle of the topic. But we're going to talk about Ana Tovar, the teacher. Ana Tovar, well, we already did the teacher, but we're going to talk about the councilwoman. You actually battled cancer heavily, very, very difficult experience in your life. Ana, the legislator. Ana, the mayor. Ana, the realtor. And Ana, the national player.
A lot of hats.
Yes. So stay with us. We're going to take a short break, and we'll continue our conversation with Ana Tovar, mayor of Tolleson. What a privilege to have the mayor of Tolleson with us today. And we just want to highlight, I mean, just second generation on one side and of the parents, and first generation on the other. And she became a mayor. She became a legislator. Amazing. You don't want to miss the remainder of this conversation. Stay with us. We're going to take a short break. This is AARP Arizona Hispanic Connection. We'll be right back. Thank you. Thank you for staying with us. This is AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. And the topic today is Ana Tovar, Mayor of Tolleson. Wow, it's easy to say, but I'm sure that title mayor has a lot, it's packed with years of experience and I'm sure sufferings and la lucha, right? For it's very easy to, I mean, I'm looking at the word mayor and I can just see how packed it is. It's very easy to say it. So let's try to kind of ask you to walk us through that process of one day or becoming the mayor of Tolleson. I mean, it's mind-boggling and congratulations
Thank
once
you.
again. Yes, this is great. So talk to us. If I remember right, Mayor Tovar, after you taught, you became a councilwoman. Is that chronologically correct?
Well, it was actually while I was teaching in 2001 is when I actually ran for council.
Okay.
So I ran for council while I was a school teacher. Didn't know too much about the actual process or how to get elected as a council member, but I dove in with both feet and decided to put my 2 kids in the stroller and started going door to door and talking to people. And
Come on. You did that?
Yes.
Amazing, isn't it?
And, a lot of our residents recognized me by, because I taught, one of their cousins or their siblings and, they welcomed me in their house and it was just a great experience to hear from the residents of, what was important to them at that time. And, during that race, I actually won the race and it was a very close margin. I mean, I won on election night. They had said I'd lost, but we had turned in a lot of the early ballot ballots through mail.
Right.
And so by Friday, I think I'd won by about 11 votes.
Oh, wow.
On my first time running for council.
This is amazing. And this goes along with the show we just had actually last Tuesday on democracy in the school system.
Yes.
And one vote counts.
Yes.
Can make a big difference.
It made a very big difference.
For all of us that think that, my vote doesn't count, nothing's going to change.
Yes.
It does,
It does, because that Tuesday from Friday, for me, it changed the race. And, it was a matter of every person, counted, especially their vote counts.
Right. And, Mayor, a lot of times we see elected officials speaking from the podium, getting applause, a round of applauses, but it's a lot of work, isn't it?
It is.
Just
it
to run. I mean,
is.
you just said that you put your kids on the stroller and then you started hitting knocking on doors.
Doors, yeah.
What else is it? Did you go through to get elected? Can you describe just a little bit more the effort and the intensity, the time commitment, etc.?
I essentially would describe it as a full-time position. Just like a full-time job, you have to commit, and it is what you put in is what you get out. So even with my first race that I ran for city council, up to every race that I ran for state legislature, state senate, and then back for mayor, I used that same emphasis of whether there was someone running or if I was running alone. I felt it was very, very important for me to reach out to my community, to listen to them, to know what their wants and needs were, and to listen.
Right.
And I think that's so very important to our residents, on whoever you represent, is giving them that opportunity to share with you the things that are not going right, things they want to see changed, because that just validates. I mean, you honestly are representing your constituency, so you might as well know what they want and what they don't want. And
now, can you, because I know that probably most of the meetings of a city council are open to the public.
Yes.
But the public, including myself, we don't always go to those meetings.
Yes.
Can you describe what happens in those meetings? What is it about it? How big is the agenda? How bloated is it? I mean, can you kind of relate to us? Which actually, I have to believe that your function as a city council woman is somewhat related to being a mayor, because you're dealing with the same thing. It's just that as a mayor, you are, so to speak, calling the shots, if you will.
Yes, so absolutely. So we're in Tolleson, we're a council of 7. So during the council meetings, it has, items on the agenda that we're either going to discuss, we're either going to brainstorm, or we're going to either approve or deny. So those could be as simple as someone coming in and requesting a permit for a restaurant, a permit for a parade, or it can go into, something big does a development such as a housing development, maybe a business development, a warehouse.
A housing, a business, a warehouse. So is that a business coming to the city?
Yes.
And they propose something?
Yes.
And typically, what do they expect from the city? Maybe to taxes, maybe land. I mean, can you kind of explain briefly what those engagements look like?
So by the time that, let's just say that it's a home builder, by the time the home builder comes to the city council, he has worked with numerous departments in our city to get him ready for the actual approval or denial of the home site being built. So we're at the very tail end of that journey for that home developer, where he's got all the permits. He's went through different committees to make sure that everything is A-OK. He's met with our engineer, our city manager. And so when it comes to us, we're there to decide to give him permission, that final stamp of approval so that he can start building those houses. Or if he doesn't, then maybe we can work on, some minor adjustments if council sees fit.
Are those kind of like the big items that a mayor deals with typically?
Absolutely. I mean, I would say my role in the past 3 years has been to bring more housing, affordable housing to the community, and also with retail. We want a community where people can walk to go get something to eat,
right.
And have a place in our community as well too. So that's been a lot of my work as mayor, is making sure that we're developing as a city and making sure that we're bringing in what our constituents want to see.
What is currently a need that you see that the community has that you would like to meet?
Well, one of those that we've been working very hard on is a grocery store. So we've been working for the past 3 years, of course, very diligently. And when we meet with grocers that are planning on having a new facility, a new grocery store, there's certain elements that have to be met for them to invest in a community and open a grocery store. One of those is the demographics in regards to how many people are around this grocery store. Number two is how much does that demographic make? So there's certain criteria. Right now, we're falling a little short in our city in regards to our population size and the amount of money that our demographics are seeing.
So from what I can understand, it's not a good business for the business at this point.
Exactly.
You don't meet their criteria
Yes.
to make money. Do people think of other options? Is the government able to do anything, maybe own something like that? Or is there room in constitution, laws, or what have you?
Well, I don't think the city should be in a business of a grocery store. And in regards to our city, we don't own much property in our city. We do own key sites, and those have been developed in the past 3 years to make sure that we are build our next city hall campus and that we have certain developments that we want to see. So we have taken the onus to buy certain lots, and that's to develop the city and to have that vision that we want. I would say the good 14%, the rest of our city that is open and has vacant land is owned by private developers.
Personally, Mayor Tovar, what have been areas where in order to meet the challenges and carry out the functions as mayor, areas of knowledge that probably there was like a learning curve? What are some of those areas that you feel you had to work to get up to speed, so to speak?
Yeah, I would say at the very beginning of my tenure in serving as a council member, things are coming to you very, very fast, and you're expected to learn a lot.
Wow.
So I sat down immediately with our accountant just to get a view of what the budget was, and for me to ask all my questions about a budget. I was familiar with the budget when I was teaching at a school, but the fact that when you're on a council where you're the mayor, you truly got to know what money is coming in and what money you're spending and going out, and making sure that you're a good steward of the taxpayer money. So right away, I wanted to make myself as familiar as possible with the budget and knowing what steps or what was I responsible for. After learning that, it's just a matter of learning and serving your passions. Because every council member is different on wanting to do different things and what their passions are. I see my role as a mayor is to help facilitate those that are on council. What are their goals? What are their ambitions? And for me to help facilitate with them so that they're successful as well too. I am I have a lot of experience in education, so that for me comes pretty easy because of what I know.
Right.
But I would say one of the most difficult things was trying to read a site plan, and meeting with our engineer and understanding that language, because it definitely is another language, and my brain just didn't operate in that manner of seeing a site plan and understanding it and knowing what was needed when a development came to town. So that took a couple of years for me to learn.
It's like anything, right?
Yes.
It's like a job. You
Yes.
get a new job, you have to. There's like a learning curve. Now, I live very close to Tolleson, and Van Buren obviously is the main street
Yes.
of Tolleson, and there has been an amazing development there. What is that all about? What was the thought? What did you do? And actually, were you there from the very beginning of that, or that was prior to you becoming a mayor, where this whole renovation started to take place?
So the inception of Van Buren, we initially started way back when I was on council. So we made some strategic decisions then. One was a new fire station, and that is just right off of Main Street. So we developed a new fire station for our community way back in the early 2000s. And that kind of kicked off our renovation of Van Buren. Then second was the police department as well, too. We had a new building for them, which incorporated our new police department and our judicial system of our courts as well, too. So that kicked off our initial investment in Van Buren within our infrastructure. And the one thing I'm super proud of during that is that we did focus on building environmentally friendly buildings and making sure that we made sure our footprint in our city was as environmentally positive as possible, and that was in the early 2000s as well too. So when I left the council in 2009, that's when the true investment started coming in regards to when you see the road, the infrastructure on Van Buren. But the investment for our businesses, we've collaborated quite a bit with our the TO Nation as well too. They've been generous in supporting a lot of grants for our small business owners to help we call it the facade program. So if there's a building there and it looks a little, it's a little sad, it's a little old, a small business can contact our city, apply for it, and hopefully get on the list to have what we call like a makeover of the actual building.
Real brief, Luces de Navidad. Is that what it's going to? Paseo de Luces.
Yes.
What is that?
That
Very
is our
briefly.
Yes. So that was the marketing that we had. Lisa Urias at the time that did that did the brainstorming on it and actually helped with our community members, and that was the name that was drawn is Paseo de Luces.
Paseo de Luces.
Paseo de Luces, yeah.
And we have to go on the second break, but give me one thing that has been challenging as a mayor, and one thing that is that like a success that you can celebrate.
I would say
quick.
one challenge is not meeting the needs of all our constituency, because they all have great ideas, and some things we're able to do, some things we're not.
Because of budget?
Because of budget, yeah. And then there's some things we just can't do because that's not our role as government. I would say the plus is meeting with our kids and our students and being very active in trying to mentor them, and having our coffee talk with mayor and council so that our community members can come at any time and speak to me.
Good. Thank you. Stay with us. This is only our second segment. We'll be right back. This is AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. The topic today, Ana Tovar, Mayor of Tolleson. We'll be right back. Thank you. Thank you for staying with us. This is AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. We have Ana Tovar with us today. The topic is Ana Tovar, Mayor of Tolleson, and because we have so much to cover, we're just going to go right to it. Everybody knows that women are amazing. I mean, I am the first one I have one at home. So I know women. Nobody needs to convince me of how. I mean, my grandma, my mother. There are 4 women in my life that are amazing. My grandma, my mama, my mom, my sister, my older sister, and then my wife. It is, no need to convince. No need to convince me about how great women are and how resourceful and amazing. Yeah. So in the midst of your life, you went to school, you're running for councilwoman, you're teaching. something happens unexpected, could we say that?
Absolutely.
So cancer comes to your life.
Yes.
How did you take it? If you can walk us through that diagnosis and you knowing about it, and then how did that, I understand you continue to do some of the things even as a councilwoman. So kind of relate to us that experience. I believe a lot of people go through it, a lot of women, and I think many people will be helped just to hear your experience.
Yes, yeah. So as you said, cancer came very fast and furious for me. I was teaching at the time. I was a kindergarten teacher, about in the 5th week of school, and this was like my 5th year of teaching at the time. I had just became a council member, so I was very excited about that new role. Starting a school year is always very busy.
Early 20s?
Early 20s, correct.
20s.
So always very busy, and just feeling a little bit tired. So didn't think much of it until I actually, there was a colleague of mine that my hand got caught in a door, and so created a big bruise, and a bruise that wasn't healing. So then my husband persisted me to go to the doctor, and I said, well, I don't have time. I have school. I have everything.
Right.
And he's like, no, you better go.
Right.
So I went to the doctor. They drew blood, and little did I know that at that time I had cancer in my body. It wasn't until he had called me in my classroom and told me to come back to the doctor's office and get the results from the blood test. And I had told him, because he'd been my family doctor, I said, I don't have a lot of time. Can you just tell me over the phone? He's
let me stop you, because this is unbelievable. And it happens to a lot of people. We have things for everything, but when it comes to our health, the work itself just pulls us, right?
Yes,
it pulls us, and sometimes we don't, but it's unbelievable.
And that's one of probably my greatest lessons of going through a cancer journey is knowing more about myself and my body and putting that first, because we always put it last, especially as women.
Yes.
We always want to take care of everyone else except ourselves.
Because I think you said it twice, if not 3 times, I'm too busy.
Yes.
Cancer, wait, I'm too busy.
Well, cancer wasn't waiting for sure, because I ended up got my diagnosis, and I still remember the day. It was August 10th. And so that day I had to resign from teaching. My doctor had said, you can't go back to teaching. You're too sick. And I didn't feel like deathly ill. I felt tired. So right away went to an oncologist and figured out what type of cancer I had, which was a rare form of leukemia. So from there, it was like, okay, we're going to get your family tested to see if you're a match, because in order for you to survive, you need a bone marrow transplant. And all this, medical I would say terminology was so new to me, because, everything was coming 100 miles an hour of not knowing what was happening.
Right.
So if you think about it, I was diagnosed on August 10th of 2001. I had my transplant, and I woke up on September 11th of 2001. I was checked into the hospital, I would say, in late August, because by then we did have a match. My brother was a donor, was my perfect match.
So marrow is what the transplant is?
Yes, my first transplant.
Marrow is something within the bone, right? Like that.
Yes, within your bone, yes.
Right,
when I was tested, initially it was a bone marrow biopsy, and that's a really long needle that goes pretty much in your hip area for them to test, and that's how they diagnosed me with that rare form of blood cancer. That's what I had. Right away my family got tested. My brother was my perfect match, so I had to go through intense chemotherapy. I checked myself into a hospital, and at the time it was at Good Samaritan, and it was through the City of Hope, their transplant program. So I was up on the 12th floor at Good Sam, and so I was in isolation, and meaning that I had very limited access for people to come and see me or visit with me.
Why is that?
So my immune system was very, very weak and very low. And going through intense chemo for about 2 weeks really essentially killed my immune system. So I couldn't be exposed to a cough, to a sneeze, because that could endanger my life.
Of course.
At that time. So the only persons that came were into my room were my husband and my sister and my mom, and they would pretty much take turns of watching and staying over with me. And I would say the hardest part during the whole transplant and the stay at the hospital was my first was about 45 days in isolation.
Wow.
And none of that time I was able to actually physically see my children. We would videotape back and
Right.
forth and give each other messages, but I would say that was probably the most difficult part. You are enduring, chemotherapy, and you just feel like you have the flu, but times 100. That's how I can describe it.
Wow.
When you have the flu, but times that by 100 or 1,000, that's how I felt. I literally couldn't do anything except lay in bed.
Right.
So I couldn't see my children for that amount of time. And I would say that mentally was probably the most enduring part of the cancer journey, is not having that physical contact with your children.
Of course.
Yeah.
Now, I understand based on our conversation that the form of cancer that you had, I believe you said that they only gave you 5% chance of survival.
Yes. Yeah.
It
was very low. I mean, because the type of rare cancer that I have, there's either 1 to 2 people diagnosed per million people.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was a very, very unusual cancer.
Yes. Very unusual cancer. And we, with some research that was done, it was an environmental toxin that I was exposed to. So they didn't figure out what exactly, but there's a list of, environmental toxins that caused my cancer.
Now, you did also tell me that you stopped teaching because of the cancer.
Oh, yeah. They immediately, once I was diagnosed, I had to stop teaching.
But you still continue your functions to some degree or to a large degree as a city council, correct?
Yes. So what our city manager, Mr. Madrano, would do is come to my hospital and drop off binders of information, because I had a lot of time and I couldn't do much, but I could read and participate. So I was able to stay abreast of what was happening at the city council, and I was able to participate over the phone on the council meetings as well, too. So that kept me a little busy.
Of course.
I was excited.
And I would say that was good, right?
Yes.
Because it kept your mind off of what you were going through and put it in something that it kind of engaged you with. So you were still still able to keep yourself in touch to a certain degree with what was going on, the community and everything, and knowing
And actually, when I got out at one time, it was about October time, November, when the community had thrown me a fundraiser, and it was a fundraiser at my church, and it was costumes, and I remember just food that people were there. I couldn't physically attend, but I was able to. My husband took me at the time in our car, and I was able just to wave to people, maybe spend like 5 minutes in my car there, like people talking to me through the window, but I couldn't, get down and couldn't have contact with people.
I assume you lost a lot of weight?
Yes, a lot of weight, and then a lot of muscle as well, too, because when your body's not doing much, it does deteriorate because of that.
So help us understand how then you move on to recovery.
Yeah.
But first, let me just ask you, death. Did you face death? I mean, was that something that tortured you, so to speak?
Well, death was there. I mean, it was a possibility for me.
You had to deal with that.
Oh, yeah.
The feeling, the thought.
Yes. And let me tell you, I wasn't scared of dying. That fear never entered me as like, because that was definitely, that could happen to me. I mean, I was very close to death.
Right.
But I wasn't scared of death. What I was worried about is...
your family, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was worried about leaving my 2 young children who were 2.
How old were they?
They were 2 and 5 at the time.
Oh, yeah.
So that was my biggest fear, because I knew, that if I did die, I would be okay, and I was going to a great place, but I would physically be leaving the earth.
You were at peace with yourself, and it was just the worry of your kids, what was going to be of them.
Yeah. And that was, I would say, a great motivator for me to really fight. I mean, because the battle's hard. I mean, you could explain it, and you can tell someone just, give it your all. But when you're in the thick of it, it does take a lot of persistence. And for me, my motivation were my 2 kids.
Do you think that the motivation and the support is a deal breaker? Can it be a deal breaker in cases where people, they don't have that, they may kind of just let that condition
take them as
Yes.
opposed to keep fighting and recover
Oh,
from it?
absolutely. For me, it was a key in staying positive. And I know that, when you talk to people that have gone through cancer, your mental state and making sure that you're positive and just wanting to be resilient, that's a great part of the fight for you to consistently not give up hope and continue to battle as well.
So basically, it's science, medicine, then your attitude, then your support. Everything has to conjugate to create a positive experience of
yes,
recovery.
Absolutely.
I assume the ones you. So is this a done deal in your situation? This cancer is pretty much done, or are there any dangers of coming back?
So when I first had my transplant, I was out of the hospital within 45 days and would go back essentially almost every day for treatment, then every other day. Then I got out to like every week. The 305 days after my transplant, my cancer returned. So in 2002, I was faced with the dilemma of, okay, you have the same cancer again, it returned. You have to go through a transplant, but this time it's a stem cell transplant. Thankfully, my brother was my match as well too. But the second time around was the fear of the known. Because the first time I didn't know what I had to endure.
Right.
Second time I knew what I had to endure. And that was very, very scary.
And so you got the transplant and you overcame that as well.
Yes, I overcame, I did the stem cell transplant in July of 2002. I was determined to beat my 45 days and stay less. So I was about at 39 days the second time. So definitely it was a journey during those years when I was diagnosed. And since then, I mean, I still go every 6 months to go get checked to make sure everything is good. And I take a whole lot of medicines, but those medicines keep me alive.
Let's cover in the last segment what was the fruit that came out after that experience?
Many
it's
good blessings.
Unbelievable, I'm sure. So stay with us. This is AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. Ana Tovar, Mayor of Tolleson, is the topic today. We'll be right back. Thank you for staying with us. This is AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. What a topic today. I am so glad that we have Mayor Ana Tovar sharing her experiences of life, her career, her family life. It is just so great. Well, the second objective of this platform is to celebrate Latino, Latinas, Latinx accomplishments. And here's one. We have one here that we can definitely celebrate. And it's just one gem of so many millions of women out there that have the similar experiences of fighting with everything they got to survive in some instances, and also to serve the community that they are a part of and that they love. So it's just amazing. So in closing, in the last segment, Mayor, help us. So what comes after that difficult situation? Let's say that was like death, right? Death, and then you kind of resurrected. So what was the fruit of that resurrection, that kind of experience of recovering? What awaited you? What other things were you involved in? How that experience kind of contributed to the next things that you were to do after that?
Well, after surviving and going through that tumultuous journey of cancer, I definitely knew that my mission in life was, number one, was to continue serving. And so I continued on with city council as well too. And then in 2009, I had the opportunity to apply for a vacancy at the state legislature. And a little bit of knowledge beforehand of me. I was, before my cancer and before my treatment, my journey, I was always a person who would talk themselves out of stuff. And I think as, females out there, you might, relate to me, where if I didn't know all the answers, I was like, okay, well, maybe I'm not going to do that. Or maybe I don't have the time to do that, or I shouldn't. But after my transplant and after cancer, I had that sense of, if I had that fear that it was gone. That fear of failure was gone.
Almost like if I was able to overcome this, I can overcome anything.
Yeah. And let's say if I do run for something and I don't get it, I'm still going to learn some type of lesson in that. And, another door, another window might open with that opportunity. So, not having that fear of failure gone, that's why I approached the application of applying for the vacancy at the state legislature. And I was granted that. So I left the council. I was vice mayor at the time in 2009, so I left that position to go to the state legislature, and I served there at the House of Representatives and also at the state Senate at that time.
So first you were a representative, and so then you run for Senate.
Yes.
Afterwards?
Yes. So during
For
that
the
time,
Senate.
I did run again for the House because I was appointed. And
So first appointed, and then you had to run the campaign.
Yes, I
How
had
was
to-
the campaign?
Oh, I took it like everything else, that was the grassroots efforts of going door to door and telling people, this is what I plan to do. And this is, I need your help and support. And together I can help serve this community and meet the needs.
What did you find at the legislature that surprised you and that you said, let's change it?
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of things that surprised me because when you're dealing at the state legislature towards a council, it's a very different type of atmosphere. You're dealing with a lot more people in the House of Representatives. There's a lot more representatives than you're dealing with at a council level as well.
Instead of 10,
Instead of 7, I mean,
Or 7, we
you're
have
dealing with 60.
60.
Yes. And they're all from different parties, where at the city council, it is a nonpartisan. So you're not there, with that D or that R or that I on you're not wearing it. You're there for a common goal.
Right.
So that was the first thing I noticed right away is, that it was partisan, and, right away people wanted to, I would say, label you. And so I would say my thing is I went in wanting to know and wanting to get to know people, because I still am a believer is that even though, we have a party system and each of us have different core values and visions, that we ultimately have more in common than we do in different. And so that was my goal, my personal goal.
So that was the first impression, a lot of partisanship.
Oh, yes.
And was it frustrating at times?
It was because I was in the Democratic Party, I still am, and in our caucus, we had a caucus of like 8 or 9. So we were very, very small in regards to our numbers. So they didn't need us for voting. Essentially our voice was very stifled there because we were in a super minority. So that was the most difficult part. But I think that allowed me to be very, very flexible and negotiate with people, not just for votes, but to negotiate for what was good for all Arizonans. And a lot of that happened behind the scenes. That didn't happen, when we were taking votes. That happened before the actual bill was crafted, while it was being crafted, during the discussion process for it to have a vote. I was definitely working behind the scenes to make sure, it was either killed or it was at least detrimental to my community as possible.
You were the minority whip in the House, correct?
Absolutely.
Minority whip. Is that literal, like a whip that you're supposed
I wish
to...
I had a whip at sometimes, that would have came very much in handy.
Handy, right.
But essentially that job as a whip is you're responsible to know where every single member is at on every single vote. So then
And you can try to persuade them as well?
Yes, you can try and persuade them as well. But my goal was making sure that all the Democrats, where I knew what issues and concerns they had on that particular bill, why they were going to vote a certain way on that bill, and then if we needed to persuade them another way, then we could. And granted, you have about 3,000 to 4,000 bills that are dropped each session, so that's a lot of bills to know about.
Do you read them all, or you have somebody to help you to read them and then kind of give you?
So
a
you
synopsis?
read like the Reader's Digest version of it. It's for those that are staff has a lot to do with making sure and going through a fine-tooth comb of everything that's in the bill. So they'll give you an overview as well too.
So I have a note that you were the highest ranking Democrat in Arizona at that time. Was that as the whip?
No, that was as the Senate
Or
Democratic leader.
Senate. Okay, so now, and just very briefly, what is the motivation to run for the Senate? If you're already a representative, Are there things that happen in the Senate that are of higher importance?
Well, not necessarily, but they do call it the higher chamber in Arizona as well, too. You are dealing with less people, so less senators. You have
In our case, we
30.
have 30.
Yes, you have 30 senators versus
Two per.
representatives are 2 per district.
Right.
A Senate is 1 per district.
Okay.
Yes. So it was, for me, it was a great transition because you do also have term limits in both houses of 8 years as well, too. So for me, it was a natural fit after redistricting to apply and run for the state Senate. At that time, it was all about timing and making sure that my district was well represented. And so I did that, and I became very shortly. I was the Senate whip, and then I was shortly then after the Senate leader.
Oh, so the whip happened in the Senate
As well, too. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I was the whip in the House and the whip in the Senate.
So that made you the highest ranking Democrat in Arizona
At that time, as leader of the Senate.
as leader.
Yes, because there was no other Democratic statewide representative that was Democrat at that time.
Did that having an extra layer of responsibilities makes it a little bit more difficult than the regular members?
Absolutely. I mean, you're in leadership, and you're at that, when you serve in a leadership capacity, whether it's at the House or the Senate, you are representing your caucus. So it's not about the internal goals or motivations that I have. It's about representing and being a leader for your entire caucus.
Right.
So it is a different perspective of what you're there for. It does require more time. It's, a lot of meetings with a lot of people, but ultimately you want to guide that caucus and that session to a positive and making sure that all your members are you're helping them with their goals and passing
Even
their
though
bills.
that group is partisan, right? So you have your own parties.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
In 1 minute, because we're running out of time, the transplant funding for access, I thought that was something that very important to you, and that came as a result of your own experience with cancer. Can you
Absolutely.
relate to
Yes.
in about a minute,
Okay.
Max?
So when I went to the state capitol, no one knew my story. No one knew that I was a 2-time cancer survivor. But when the recession hit, there was a lot of things that were cut. And one of those things that were cut were transplant funding for access patients. There was 99 patients from one day to the next received a notice that their access coverage was null and void, and they were no longer able to get a transplant.
Wow.
And 99 patients on a transplant for all Arizonans is a big deal, because that means at that time they've exhausted all other treatments. They need a transplant to survive.
Right.
This is when I came out with my story and shared that I survived 2 transplants and that transplant funding was vital, because without that, these 99 people would essentially die.
Right.
So it was about $1.4 million that needed to be reinstated for these transplant patients to
What's
get
the
that.
span of time that this is happening?
I thought it would be something that would happen immediately, because these are people's lives
Right.
that we're dealing with. It took ultimately 6 months, and 3 people died from that list.
3 people had. Oh, that's
3 people died.
That's amazing.
But ultimately, it was passed. It was reinstated, and for me, that was probably one of my biggest things I look back on and saying that, I went through my cancer journey for a reason, because I'm always a
Right.
firm believer that things happen in life for a reason and there's a purpose
No hay
behind
mal
it.
que por bien no venga.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
So that was a big.
That was mine.
And is that still being funded today?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, we have about a minute and a half to go. And now, so the last question, what's next for Ana Tovar, Mayor of Tolleson? What comes next in your vision of service to our country, to our state, to our community?
Well, I'm always one to have the door open and the window open, because when opportunities present themselves, you definitely have to look at them with both eyes open and know if it's in your heart or if it's the right timing. So I would say my ultimate goal is to serve the state of Arizona, whether that be at a city level, a county level, in Washington, D.C., I'm very much open to whatever life brings me.
Right.
And it's all about, to me, timing and opportunity.
You're still very young, governor of Arizona at one day in the future.
I would say that would be a great possibility.
So, where do you think is the function that the biggest I guess platform that you feel you can make a big difference at the state level or at the national level?
Oh, I think it's just a matter of what what it is that you're trying to solve,
Right.
what it is that you're trying to represent. I've always, whether it's from my smallest role of being in the PTA or my biggest role that I've ever been in, is always never losing sight that you're tasked with representing families that are depending on you.
Wow.
And as long as you're passionate about serving them and doing what's right for your community, then it doesn't matter where you're serving.
Mayor Tovar, thank you so very much for spending time with us and sharing your life story, your experiences in professional career, etc. Thank you, and we celebrate your success and your
Thank you.
service to our community.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us today. This is all the time we have for now. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.